You guys want to know why I left BuzzFeed, what happened, so made a little list and we're just gonna go over it. Okay. Reason number 1.
BuzzFeed was worth $1.7 billion in 2016. NBC Universal put $400 million into it, Facebook was paying it to make content, and its newsroom was about to win a Pulitzer Prize. In May of 2026, 2 months ago, a TV executive named Byron took a majority control of the entire company for $20 million in cash and a $100 million IOU. Quite literally a promise that he'll pay it back later. The company sold one of its YouTube shows, one single show, for 4 times more actual cash than the whole company just went for. The obvious answer as to why they collapsed is that Facebook killed BuzzFeed, but that's only half true. BuzzFeed never owned anything. It didn't own its audience, which it rented from Facebook's algorithm, its stars, who built 9-figure careers the moment they left the building, or even its best show, which it had to sell to the host to pay off its own debts. BuzzFeed ran countless extremely successful media brands that are still active to this day. The only thing that ended was BuzzFeed itself. This is the story of BuzzFeed, a company that taught the entire internet how to go viral and then got outlived by everything it ever made.
And we had this sort of epic back and forth, and eventually they said, well, we reserve the right to not send the shoes. And I said, okay, fine, but can you at least send me a picture of the 12-year-old Vietnamese girl who stitches them together? And then they didn't write back.
BuzzFeed started with a pair of shoes back in January of 2001. A grad student at the MIT Media Lab named Jonah Peretti was procrastinating on his master's thesis, and he found Nike's new shoe customization service where you could print any word you wanted on your own pair. Peretti typed in the word sweatshop. Nike rejected the order and called it inappropriate slang, and Peretti wrote back that sweatshop is a real dictionary word, meaning a factory where people and sometimes even children work in unhealthy conditions. So he asked if they could please send him the shoes. The email chain went back and forth. Peretti forwarded it to about 10 friends, and within weeks, it had spread to millions of people. He ended up on the Today Show debating Nike's head of global PR with Katie Couric moderating. And by his own admission, he knew basically nothing about sweatshop labor. All he cared about was that other people cared. This is the important part, and Peretti understood it immediately. He discovered a distribution system. A random student with no press credentials and no budget had reached millions of people because the content itself shocked viewers. He spent the next few years running experiments on this exact mechanic. He called the target audience the Bored at Work Network, all the office workers killing time at their desks. And in 2005, that reputation got him recruited by Arianna Huffington and Ken Lehrer to co-found the Huffington Post. But HuffPost was a news site, and Peretti didn't actually care about news. All he cared about was virality. So in November 2006, he started a side project called BuzzFeed, which he described as a lab, a place to run experiments on what makes people share things, staffed by a small team, initially working on it 1 day a week. When AOL bought HuffPost for $315 million in 2011, Peretti took his exit and went full-time on the lab. Early BuzzFeed was low-key a genuine scientific achievement. Nobody else was measuring shareability as a metric of its own. Legacy media was still optimizing for front pages and Google search, and Peretti was optimizing for the moment one human sent a link to another person. He hired data scientists. He A/B tested headlines at industrial scale. He figured out before almost anyone that Facebook was about to become the largest referral engine in human history, and he built an entire company on top of it. In this also lies the exact issue that would eventually end BuzzFeed though. He built everything on top of that principle. We have a long way to go before we get there though, so hold that thought.
9 times out of 10, I just want you to leave too. I'm busy, I got shit to do.
Maybe that's why men don't like you. That's just rude, alright? Why invite me over if you want me to fucking leave? What?
I cannot sleep with as many people as I want to without being judged.
You can. I ain't gonna judge, I can't give a shit. Like, sleep with whoever you want, you know? What's it got to do with me?
By 2012, 75% of BuzzFeed's traffic came from social media, which mostly meant Facebook, and the numbers were insane. This is the era everyone remembers. The quizzes telling you which Disney princess you are, the listicles, 21 things only 90s kids will understand. It was everywhere, on every feed, all the time. And it's easy to look back and clown on it, but the idea behind it was actually pretty genius. Every quiz was an experiment, and every headline was just another data point, and all of it showed them how to better optimize the slop. Then came the videos. In 2012, Peretti hired Z Frank, one of the original YouTube creators, to build BuzzFeed motion pictures out in LA, and that division created basically every BuzzFeed thing you actually care about for the most part. The Try Guys launched in 2014. 4 guys named Keith, Ned, Zach, and Eugene trying things on camera, and views on all the channels spiked exponentially. Some other examples were Ladylike and Worth It. And in 2018, a producer named Ryan Bergera launched BuzzFeed Unsolved, where he and Shane Madej covered true crime and ghost hunting, and it became the most successful series the company has ever made. Tasty launched in 2015, offering overhead hands-only cooking videos, and it became one of the biggest food brands on the planet. February 2015 was the peak of the website era. A Tumblr photo of a dress that some people saw as blue and black and some people saw as white and gold was going completely viral. So BuzzFeed's post asking which one you saw broke the entire internet for a night. And in April 2016, the peak of the video era, 2 BuzzFeed staffers in hazmat suits sat in the office cafeteria and wrapped rubber bands around a watermelon one at a time on Facebook Live for 45 minutes until it exploded. More than 800,000 people watched it live. At the time, it was the most watched live stream in Facebook's history. Journalists were unironically calling it the future of television. Facebook was literally paying BuzzFeed to make Facebook Live content because they needed live videos to compete with Snapchat and Periscope. BuzzFeed was serving Facebook before they even had their own audience. If you're enjoying this video and you want to see more like it in the future, like, subscribe, and hit the bell notifications. It would help a shit ton. Thank you. The money followed the views. Andreessen Horowitz put in $50 million in 2014 at an $850 million valuation. NBC Universal invested $200 million in August 2015 at a $1.5 billion valuation, and another $200 million in 2016 at $1.7 billion. Disney money went to Vice, Turner money went to Refinery 29, Discovery money went to Thrillist, and no one wanted to fund BuzzFeed. But at the same time, BuzzFeed started looking like it would directly compete with all of those companies themselves, not just the medias that they sponsored. There was an issue in the numbers though, and the Financial Times found it. In 2015, at the absolute height of its golden era, BuzzFeed projected $250 million in revenue and only brought in 170. This gap wasn't a one-time thing either. It followed them all the way to the end, and it just got a lot wider over the next 10 years.
I did leave BuzzFeed about 6 weeks ago, right at the end of January. I wanted to wait to make this video just until all the videos that I was in that were like pre-recorded with me in them were already posted on BuzzFeed's channel, so there was no confusion about that. Just in case there's anyone watching who doesn't know me, I was a video producer at BuzzFeed Video. I worked there from April of 2015 until the end of January of 2017, and I worked exclusively on this show called Ladylike from October of 2015 until when I left in January of 2017.
Here's the thing about building stars on a media company salary. The star's face gets famous and the company gets the upside, and the arrangement holds exactly as long as the star doesn't figure out that math. Safiya Nygaard figured out the math first. She was a producer on Ladylike, one of the most recognizable faces in the building, and she left in January 2017 after less than 2 years. Her explanation video was measured and honestly pretty gracious. She said BuzzFeed owning content she made for them was the deal that she signed up for, but the company owning her name outright was a line that they were approaching. That video, Why I Left BuzzFeed, basically founded an entire genre. Over a dozen ex-staffers made their own version in the following years. Her independent channel grew past 9 million subscribers, which is several million more than any number BuzzFeed's main channel had added since. The Try Guys left in 2018, and their case is the one that should have set off every alarm in the building, because in addition to quitting, they negotiated to take the Try Guys name and brand with them and built an independent company on it. A second Try Guys channel, live tours, merch, and the whole operation. North of 7 million subscribers. Quinta Brunson, a BuzzFeed video star, left in 2018 and went on to create Abbott Elementary for ABC and became the first black woman to solo win the Emmy for comedy writing. Michelle Kerr left and built a channel that's since been nominated against actual network television at the Emmys. And in late 2019, Ryan Bergera and Shane Madej, the Unsolved guys, the single most valuable franchise BuzzFeed ever produced, founded their own company called Watcher with Worth. It's Stephen Lim. They kept making Unsolved for BuzzFeed through 2021, then launched Ghost Files independently in 2022, which is the same show with the same 2 guys, and the audience just followed them like it was nothing, because it really was nothing. The audience was never subscribed to BuzzFeed. They were subscribed to Ryan and Shane, and BuzzFeed just happened to be standing between them. Every single one of these people got more valuable the moment they left. I genuinely can't think of a better natural experiment in media economics. The corporation kept the archive, the library, the brand, and the channels with tens of millions of legacy subscribers, but it kept declining regardless. Because the thing the audience actually valued walked out the door almost ritualistically one at a time. And while the faces were leaving out the front, the foundation was cracking underneath. After the 2016 election, Facebook decided the news and viral content feed it had built was a liability, and it started algorithmically stopping the exact kind of content BuzzFeed existed to make. BuzzFeed laid off 100 people in 2017, laid off around 200 more in 2019, including the entire national news desk and the podcast team. And this was a company whose revenue had actually grown 15% in the past year. It didn't matter though. The landlord had changed the terms and there was no lease.
BuzzFeed News is shutting down Deepti.
Yeah, pioneering media website, as the Washington Post calls it. BuzzFeed News even won a Pulitzer Prize in its 12-year history. It's now announced that it will be shutting down. The co-founder, Jonah Peretti, telling staff it was due to a range of things, the tech recession, but also declining advertising and other challenges.
There is one part of the story that I have actual respect for. In 2011, Peretti hired Ben Smith away from Politico to build a real newsroom inside the Quiz Factory, and everyone laughed in his face. Then BuzzFeed News spent a decade making their criticism age like milk. They broke major investigations, built foreign bureaus, and did serious accountability journalism with the traffic money from the Disney Princess quizzes, which as a funding model is honestly kind of amazing. They also published the single most controversial document of the era. In January 2017, BuzzFeed News published the Steele dossier in full, 35 pages of unverified claims about Donald Trump, and stated openly that the allegations were unverified. Newsrooms across the country condemned them for the decision and include BuzzFeed's name to that document permanently for better and for worse. The peak was real though. In 2021, BuzzFeed News won the Pulitzer Prize for international reporting for a series that used satellite imagery to identify more than 260 structures China had secretly built to detain Uyghur Muslims. The same year, it was a Pulitzer finalist for the FinCEN Files investigation into global banking corruption. No glaze, but a website whose front page was asking which type of bread you are had one of the best investigative teams in American journalism. The issue is that it just didn't make any money. Reports citing people familiar with the numbers put the newsroom's losses at around $10 million a year, and by 2022, shareholders were openly pushing Peretti to shut it down. On April 20th, 2023, he did. BuzzFeed News closed as part of a 15% company-wide layoff, about 180 people 2 years after the Pulitzer. One staffer posted that she was laid off while on maternity leave. Peretti's memo said that he'd made the decision to overinvest in the newsroom because he loved its work and mission so much, which is a strange way to describe killing something if you ask me, but I think he actually meant it, and that's kind of sad. The one part of BuzzFeed that produced something of permanent value was the part the business model could never support because Facebook's algorithm doesn't pay a premium for Pulitzers.
It was once the king of the digital age until its kingdom came crashing down. BuzzFeed went from winning Pulitzer Prizes to becoming a punchline in memes. Its fall was swift, dramatic, and spectacular. So what happened to one of the most popular media companies of the 2010s?
Everything after 2021 completely went downhill for BuzzFeed, and it starts with the worst timed IPO in digital media history. In December 2021, BuzzFeed went public through an SPAC merger. On the same day it announced it was buying Complex Network for $300 million, $200 million of it in cash, financed partly by taking out $150 million in convertible debt. The theory was that they would scale it, get big enough and public enough, and then the market would treat them like they're the future again. The market did not do this. The stock opened at around $9, dropped to $6 on day one, and then just kept going down pretty much forever. And here's the detail that tells you everything about who eats the loss when a company like this dies. Dozens of former employees filed claims with the American Arbitration Association, alleging the company botched the IPO communications so badly that they were locked out of selling roughly 900,000 shares before the price collapsed. The people who made the videos watched their equity evaporate on a technicality while they held it. Then the debt clock started running, and BuzzFeed began liquidating like crazy. January 2023, the company announced it would also use AI to help create quizzes and content, and the stock spiked more than 150% in days, then fell all the way back down, which is the most honest chart the market ever drew about this company, which really kind of sums up the company as a whole, just overall disappointing. In February 2024, it sold Complex to a shopping app called Network for $108 million, roughly a third of what it had paid 3 years earlier, and laid off another 16% of the staff in the same week, with the stock trading at 21 cents, down about 98% from the IPO. But it kept the crown jewel. First We Feast, the studio that makes Hot Ones. And the Hot Ones sale is my favorite fact of this entire story. Through 2024, BuzzFeed shopped it around at $70 million and couldn't find a buyer. And in December 2024, it finally sold for $82.5 million in cash to a group that included the Soros Fund, Crooked Media, Rhett and Link's media company, and Sean Evans himself. The host bought his own show out of the wreckage. The talent once again ended up owning the thing the corporation could not hold on to, except this time the corporation literally handed it over to them for debt relief. Hot Ones is thriving right now, by the way, independently. It's expanding and doing completely fine. Everything BuzzFeed sells does great the second BuzzFeed isn't attached to it, and at some point, you can't call it a coincidence anymore.
BuzzFeed. 20 million subscribers, 20,000 views a video. The once thriving brand now displays a Google trend graph that looks like this, a YouTube viewership graph that looks like this, and a stock price graph that looks like this. The price fall of 55% from $10 a share to $4.50 a share over only the last month and a half, in conjunction with numerous rounds of layoffs and redundancies, hints at the rough seas that BuzzFeed happens to be sailing through at this very moment.
This brings us to the last 18 months, where the numbers stopped being sad and started being more surreal than anything. BuzzFeed lost $57 million in 2025. In March of 2026, its annual report told investors that there was substantial doubt about the company's ability to continue as a going concern, which is accountant language for we might not survive the next year, and it didn't have sufficient resources to fund its obligations over the next 12 months. By the first quarter of 2026, it had $6.8 million in cash and about $60 million in debt, and NASDAQ had sent a deficiency notice threatening to delist the stock. Vivek Ramaswamy had bought an activist stake back in 2024 and publicly suggested the company hire Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, which tells you what kind of buyers that they were potentially looking at. Then Byron Allen showed up. Allen is a former comedian who built a real media empire, the Weather Channel, hundreds of TV stations and streaming channels, and in May 2026, his family office agreed to buy 40 million newly issued shares at $3 each, 120 million on paper. But read the actual structure because it's incredible. $20 million in cash at closing and a $100 million promissory note due in 5 years at 5% interest. He took roughly 51% of the company that NBC Universal once valued at $1.7 billion for $20 million actual dollars in an IOU. The deal closed on May 27th, 2026. Allen is currently the chairman and CEO, and his stated plan is to use BuzzFeed to launch a free streaming platform that, in his words, is officially chasing YouTube, which I'd call ambitious at best, and I'll just leave it at that. And Jonah Peretti, the guy who tricked Nike into going viral in 2001, co-founded HuffPost and built the lab that became the loudest website on earth, is no longer the CEO of BuzzFeed. His new title is the president of BuzzFeed AI. 20 years of contagious media theory, a Pulitzer, $1 billion valuation, all of it in the final chapter of his run is an AI job title at a company he doesn't control anymore. So let's sum it all up. Safiya Nygaard is independent and huge. The Try Guys, independent, they own their name. Quinton Brunson has Emmys. Watcher exists, Ghost File exists, and it's just Unsolved with the serial numbers filed off, made by the guys who invented it. Hot Ones is independent and owned partly by its own host. HuffPost, which BuzzFeed acquired in 2020, is reportedly the profitable one. Tasty just got spun into its own subsidiary, so outside investors can buy it without touching the rest. Every aspect of this company is alive and healthy in someone else's name. BuzzFeed spent 20 years proving that on the internet, the audience belongs to whoever the audience actually likes, and people don't like corporations that are purely acting as middlemen for the most part. They still exist, so if there are any interesting updates, I'll cover them, but for the biggest headache in internet history, they suffered a lot of their own, meaning no one ever really benefited from them existing in the first place.
That we're obsessed with you when we hook up.
All right, fair play. fair play, all right.